kush ish he ksati papawil he sq'oyis liya kiki he silek and he schatman, things that live in the ocean. So my name is Maura. I use she her pronouns. And today I'm going to talk about Chumash language project that I work on. I'm Chumash from Ventura, California. And this project is called Kelp Neologisms. And that's just a fancy word for new words. And this is a picture of me fishing. Really proud of that rod. I found it at sea. There's a ocean maritime law that when you find things, you can get to keep them at sea. So that's kind of something I wanted to brag about. We put a new reel on that, but and I'm in my waders, so this is shore fishing. And then this photo and the word sq'oyis, and that is the word I have found in Sq'oyis, Santa Barbara, Chumash for seaweed. And that's an anemone right there, and that is some, I believe, sea lettuce. So I'll talk more about what this talk is going to be, but for the most part, it's such a wide range of audience that it's kind of hard for me to figure out where exactly to talk to. And I guess I'm feeling insecure about my like kelp and seaweed technical knowledge. So forgive me if and I would love people's help on naming like, what the species are, but I'm pretty sure I got what I was looking for. So yeah, and I'm excited that the kelp culture talks are a wide variety of hosting people who are, more serious kelp scientists, and then having my work here to get to talk about Chumash language is exciting. So, see if my slides are working. So far, oh, okay. Try to get that. Can you see that, Emma?
Yes, that looks great.
So again, my name is Maura Sullivan. I'm from Coastal Band of the Chumash Nation, and I'm working on my PhD in linguistics. And that's a graduate program out at Tulane University, as Emma had introduced, Bulbancha. This map here is my homelands out in Chumash homelands. I'll talk about that in a minute, but whenever I talk about Tulane, it's important for me as a relative to make sure that I'm giving that respect to the folks whose land I have been on the last 6 years off and on. So that's many Gulf South tribes. New Orleans is where the Mississippi comes down. And so this is Choctaw, Atakapa-Ishak, Houma, Chittimacha, a very, still a very thriving and diverse native community. But back in the day, a lot of tribes were using the Mississippi River to live and to fish and all that. So that's where I'm at right now. So again, grateful to Kakinalin Himolokiwash Iti Hishup. Thank you for the people of this land for having me and hosting me this whole time. This map here is a collaboration between artists Solange Aguilar, Stephen Franco, Annette Cordero-Rabe, and myself. We produced this and we modified it so I could use it for a presentation, so I could show where we're from. So for people that don't know, this is north of present-day Los Angeles. Shout out to the Tongva folks on the call. And Houma down there, that's kind of where our like border shared territory is Malibu. So this project is, talking about the kelp and seaweed that I've encountered along the coast of, that's Mishopshno, which is, that's Carpinteria, but down and up further, Santa Barbara, Ventura. So these are all places that I grew up playing with seaweed. So that just wanted to situate where I'm speaking from. Okay, let's see. So I kind of did this backwards. I wanted to put up front what my takeaways from this project have been. I got to connect with language workers, created interest from Chumash and other non-Chumash folks. It gave me momentum on this project. This has been a project on the back burner for me for a long time. And it really just got me excited and kind of pushed me to pull it out of the dream space. I think that's where a lot of my projects end up stalling. I have great ideas, but then I can't quite bring them out into fruition. So it's really exciting to see how this project motivated me. And then language buddies has been a topic I've been using for a while, which is a strategy to increase language learning. And my mom was my language buddy on this project, and we're language buddies on a lot of things. It just means having somebody that you work on with language or ask language questions to, and kind of in an informal way that just keeps the fire going on language work. And so this is her photo she took. She was also my co-researcher. I sent her and my dad out to gather some photos. So, and so, yeah, the big issue for me within the last year, I've just really been fascinated by seaweed and different seaweeds and kelp. And what I found was there's, hundreds of species of seaweed, and all of them are edible. Some might not be that great. Some might be more bitter than others or not. And it really just excited in me kind of wanting to pursue. And the issue for me when I started looking as a language person, was that we just have one word for seaweed. And now that kind of comes from, we are a language that's in recovery, revitalization, sustainability stages. It very well could be that we had a bunch of different words, but from the dictionary that I use, I was only really able to find one. And that really just fascinated me. Like, there's so many questions there. I'm sure other language workers on the call, maybe your gears are spinning as well. But for me, this was really interesting, and I wanted to kind of use it as an entry point. So very basically, the title became, what should we call this? And that was kind of my way of saying, gosh, there's all these different seaweeds, and let's figure out how should we go about if we do want to name them. And then connecting it back as well to food sovereignty. Yeah, I think a lot about what ancestral forms of vegetable or like green foods would be. And I think that in my current practice and my food reclamation journey, I have not thought about seaweed as I started to just realize this is a huge source of food. And so as I start talking about gathering and food, I think it's also important to say, like, use best practice when you're going out. And there's stuff online you can find, but definitely, for example, I would not eat these because they already washed up. And so there's ways to go about gathering seaweed that's the safest for you in terms of consuming it. And I'm not quite covering that in this talk, but it's tangential. So I just wanted to bring that up to folks that, take some caution around as you start interacting with seaweed. But yeah, this is just a larger project that I'm interested in terms of trying to learn more about our native foods. So as I built this talk, I was thinking about what is some already pre-existing evidence for, I guess I have to take a step back. So neologisms means new words. And most of the time, when we are making new words, we are filling the gap for new things that our ancestors never had. Phones, cars, microwave, computer, and language workers have always kind of filled that gap creatively. And yeah, I'm sure there's people on the call who could throw some out, but I thought it was very interesting that this was another term we use in language work is called a domain. So seaweed as a domain, there's several dozen off our specific coast. Earlier I quoted there's about 400 off of California, but I would say probably several dozen off of Chumash lands is safe. And so we have one word, sq'oyis, that I talked about, but it was so interesting to me, a naming project for things that our ancestors actually had and interacted with. It's not the other side of neologisms, which is like computers or cars or modern day things. So what I did was looked at what our language is already doing. So here is a slide showing evidence in Chumash for animals and plants that have a descriptive name. So my instinct around creating this project was we should describe the seaweeds, how they look. And I have a slide talking about that in a moment, but I just wanted to go through these really quick. This picture is goldenrod, and shout out and thank you so much to Chimowe Lopez for workshopping this with me. Again, another language buddy out of Mishopshno, or out of Shaloa, Montecito. So he brought up, I said, do you have any more examples? Because what I came with was wontot is oriole, and that's actually the word for yellow. So that's an oriole. I think it's a bullock oriole. And then he brought up, we also have goldenrod, which is that plant there. And that word, stuhilma, is tail of the rabbit. Poop-oo is roadrunner, and that is like hand is poo. So we were always joking, like, does that his name mean like the one with the hands, And then Chimowe also threw out a couple other interesting ones. Epsu-i-ashka, which is the word for lichen, which translates to hat, coyote's hat. And then Schutash hilhus is coffee berry. And he also thought that was an interesting example of describing a plant. Yeah, so we're just, this is very beginning stages of just like starting to dip into exploring our language and how we're already naming things. And then for language workers, how does your language already name things? And then I kind of wanted to just put, yeah, this is kind of geared towards language workers, and kind of using seaweed and kelp as an entry point to creating, more language awareness. So that's that slide. So the roadmap, another photo from my mom here. And let's see. So basically, yeah, just trying to figure out how can we make more language opportunities for people. This could turn into a game, like a matching game or like an activity. And neologisms fill the gap for us as speakers to try to have places that we need to create words. And like I said earlier, most neologisms are new things that our ancestors didn't know about, but it's very interesting to have a plentiful category that we can start naming. And this all goes off of a language revitalization technique called reclaiming domains. First heard about that from Zeke Zaire, who is a speaker of Lachute Seed up in Washington. Basically find a thing you like and learn about it. So, find a thing that captures your attention and make words that you will use. And so that's kind of been part of my language journey recently. As Emma had talked about, I'm finishing my graduate program. I'm starting to transition into different things and realizing it is my role or my job to try to be creative, to give people ways that they want to learn language. So this is exciting to be able to start getting the gears moving, and I'm so excited so many community members showed up, so we can keep talking. So I decided just to do two. Okay, so what are we doing? Okay, so step one, make your phrases. I decided to focus on texture and color. So gather photos, gather words, create prompts. So I have my color words and create phrases. Chumash, or yeah, different languages have different word order. I'm realizing now too that Emma and I spoke about something earlier. So I will pause just a moment to speak about in my talk, I said I would talk about like Indigenous knowledge sovereignty. So it's important for me to kind of draw a line to say, you know, this is a Native and community initiated project. It would be inappropriate for people who are not Native to take on this kind of work without working in partnership with Native folks. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I know people oftentimes get ideas for grants or projects, and I would just really hate to see this idea being taken and not being used in a good way. So I hope that people can, yeah, take this. I'm putting myself out there by sharing this knowledge and kind of my ideas, but I'm doing it because I hope people will take it and learn from it, again, in a good way. So that was my little pause there. So this is the inner workings of my brain. Color words. So phrases like the brown one, it's brown, it's green, texture words. But I couldn't find a lot of these translations. So my mom and I jumped on the phone and we were just workshopping like, well, what about this? What about that? You know, what about rough? What about, you know? And then finally, my final point is, so this is all the work that like someone would need to do in order to bring this out to become an activity. There's kind of the behind the scenes work. And then it could become a matching game, a guessing game. I even thought about maybe like flashcards on a ring that people could have in their pocket when they're out tide pooling, hiking. Other topics could be birds or plants. So just any way that we can try to get people having the language and using it more. And then these phrases here, I looked up the verb for to resemble. So this is shaqpeshtesh hikap. One of the seaweeds resembles kind of like a feathery look to it. So this was all the stuff that I was just starting out. And then alamkak hihet and alamkak, that means brown. So for a seaweed that's brown, maybe that's a name that we would go towards that. And so here's the talk I had with my mom, Marisa. Latin names. Let's talk about them. I just took an herbal workshop garden class up in Philadelphia. And yeah, they impressed upon me like, sure, Latin names, they're not great, but in order to kind of distinguish between different things, they're useful for that. So this in particular, common name, I believe, Turkish towel, scientific name, Mastocarpus papillatus. I don't know. But my proposal for the Chumash people here, just kidding. Here's how I worked through naming this one. Discussion point at the bottom for language workers would be, how do you feel about using words out of context? I don't feel great borrowing a word rough when the sub parentheses said of terrain. To me, the spirit of that word should be used for land and not borrowed out for a seaweed naming project. But I'm kind of like on the fence about it because I kind of just feel like we also have to like use what we have, and I could see that I would be okay with borrowing this. So again, these are all conversations within the community or within a language program or pod or family or however people want to do that. But my first reaction was that I didn't love that, because I felt like in other ways with our language, we're careful not to, it just becomes a slippery slope to start borrowing things out of context. So this is what I'm going with, though, because yeah, there was not a word for bumpy. So that first one is was hisen, so rough. And so it's rough. We could use a name. The name could be Swas hisen or Alwas hisen. So those are names that deal with texture. And then in terms of color, skilitasen is a word that was proposed and accepted by my language friend and mentor, Deborah Sanchez, a few years back, to mean pink. Tasen is red, and kili means a little bit. I'm proposing today ahi, which means of darkness, to be dark red. So sahitasen. Again, all of these are still workshop. And so two names that I could possibly propose for this would be skilitasen, swashisen. It's a little bit pink and it's rough. Or sahitasen. It's dark red and it's rough. And I liked that one. So this one I kind of did on my own. Like I said, my mom and I had talked about it, and then I kind of ran with it, because then we also talked. I was like, it's not pink. And she's like, no, look at the picture. So, this was a great, again, discussion item for me and a fun project to do. Let's see. Click. Okay. Number 2. I got to move things around. Zoom. Okay. So this one I did on my own. It was self-guided. I believe this is Ulva lactica sea lettuce. Could be wrong. Totally fine with being wrong. Okay. So this one I'm proposing. So yeah, first off, it's green. So Chulapshan is green, or medicine. So we could go Cholapshan, hijo sq'oyis. It's green, that seaweed. Or I decided, after talking to some folks, they said that was one that was used for food that they had memories of in their family. So is it the yummy one? I don't know. Syuxtun hihe sq'oyis. So then I decided, okay, maybe this one could be called al-Syuxtun, which means to be yummy. Like al is a stative verb, or like a stative prefix. So al-Syuxtun sq'oyis. It's yummy, that one. So yeah, next steps are definitely discussing with community. Again, this is something that a lot of language workers come up with, or come to with their work, is kind of like, when we do new things, how do we bring those out into the community in ways that people feel, yeah, included, and like we're not leaving people behind, or that people are on the same page about these things, especially when it comes to new things, because then I could just see how that would become maybe an example of like language shift. Like maybe one group is deciding they want to start accepting new words, and then another group doesn't. And then now we have, but that's interesting. Language is always evolving. So asking people if they would want to adopt these. And then I think my next steps would be creating materials to send to people, especially people with young people in their families. This can be an exciting way to start interacting and engaging with the language more. And I guess I felt, yeah, another takeaway at the end was like, well, maybe we don't need to be naming things. Maybe that was why we had one word for it, because then people just use descriptors to talk about them. But that's just kind of where I landed. I think that's it.